Hey, everybody. Welcome to tonight's late night happy hour with the Kamenetzky brothers. Brian Kamenetzky and Andy Kamenetzky joined tonight. And this is exciting because we're joined. Andy and I like to be joined by people who do real journalism every once in a while. And so we've invited onto the show senior politics reporter at KPCC 89.3 in LA, Pasadena, technically. Libby Denkmann, thanks so much for coming on because you are a very, 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 very busy person right now.
You know, it's the Super Bowl for us, for politics nerds. So it's the Super Bowl for people who could never play sports. So
yeah, but I mean,
very excited.
The difference is the Super Bowl ends. Like, you know, there's 4 quarters, and even if there's an overtime, like, it's rare where you don't have an NFL game that is decided in overtime. And, you know, I guess that is the playoffs, but this would be the equivalent of like a non-tuple overtime Super Bowl where like neither team can find the ball. And they're just letting time expire where they're trying to figure out where the ball is.
Yep. Yeah, it's painful, man. I don't know. I mean, Steve Kornacki is going to blow a gasket like live on MSNBC. He's doing the Lord's work. But yeah, I'm just lucky that I don't have to like be following every county in Georgia and like what the hell's going on there. California, the picture is a little bit clearer, and you know, there's still some outstanding races, but we're not worrying about like every tiny little hamlet getting their ballots counted on time in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, every 4 years, we all become experts in geography of cities that we've never visited. So before we get into this, Libby, if you don't hear her on KPCC, is just a phenomenal resource and does great work. You know, as she says, with all of these local races, with what's happening in California, and I, for one, have been slightly distracted by what's been going on, as my grandmother would have called it, the Michigas going on out of nationally. I've completely not been paying attention to the results and everything going on in California. So we'll get to that in a minute. But we were talking before we started, your vote for favorite meme thus far of the cycle.
It's definitely the what Nevada ballot counters are looking like, and it's the like 1993 Brian McKnight slow jam where he's just like, one like a dream come true, and then I'm not going to sing anymore, but that's definitely the best meme out of the ballot counting so far.
That one is great. There's the one where you have the 4 Golden Girls and Rose is Nevada, and you just have that classic line, "Get to the point, Rose," because their stories just took forever.
I love that one. We, of course, had to do Bush versus Gore without memes. It was, you know, the young people don't understand that.
An amazing, my favorite, because, you know, there's also these different, there's these different maps of the U.S. and it's like, this is what blank would look like if Biden won all those states, and that, you know, they'd color in certain states blue to complete the joke. My favorite is one from, I guess it's a comic. I'm not even sure who this guy is, but it's a map that's all red except for Florida, DC, and Hawaii. And says, this is what it would look like if Biden won all the states where I was stabbed at an Applebee's. I cannot stop laughing at this one. I keep looking at it. I keep laughing. It's the best of all of them. It's amazing.
Down the legality of owning a kangaroo in the United States.
Okay, for a second I thought our sound went
like whether or not.
Okay, what? But yeah, it's Libby. Can you hear us?
No.
Yep. I can.
Okay, good.
Okay, yeah, but it's whether or not you can own one, not own one, or own one, but you have to have a permit. Now, Libby, you were pretty dialed into politics. Where do I go to get a kangaroo permit?
Yeah, I gotta say that the permitting, the whatever kind of weapon or zoo animal you can own, I don't have that information at my fingertips, unfortunately.
I had no idea that there was that much research going into kangaroos. I wouldn't think that most people, I mean, other than maybe Florida, because it's Florida, and, you know, places like Idaho, or, you know, that just seem to be into, you know, freedom for the sake of freedom. The reality is a domesticated kangaroo seems like a total pain in the ass. Like, if we're really being honest about this, like, that seems like a really difficult pet to own. As much as kangaroos are really fun to watch from a distance, that seems like a toughie to raise.
They're not very nice either.
I mean, it seems cranky. And then also, I don't think the pouch is like cozy in there. I think it's like kind of gross and like not, you don't want to deal with an actual live kangaroo.
Well, and you're the one, I mean, as the pet owner, you're the one stuck cleaning it every day. Like, it's like when you bathe your dog or anything like that, you got to handle the pouch.
Oh, sure. Yeah. My dog gets a bath every day. Yeah.
What kind of dog do you have?
My dog hasn't had a bath in like 3 months. I'm not like, this poor thing is so neglected right now. I mean, he's spoiled to hell, but he's a dachshund. He's right over here making snuffling sounds. He's a dachshund and probably spaniel mix. And his name's Monty. He's a rescue. Yeah. He's a good boy. He's a very good boy.
We have a half dachshund, half Chihuahua mix here, who's also a rescue. The pets, by the way, have been the big winner in the pandemic, with everybody having to be home. Like pets absolutely love. Like, they don't want this thing to end. It's the best for them.
No, cats are like, get the hell out. Like, cats want you to leave, but dogs definitely are 100% here for the pandemic life.
Oh, it's who isn't at this point?
It's pretty amazing. So we wanted to get you on to talk about, obviously there's so much national attention right now with, the presidential election, which, I don't want to tell you how to cover your politics, but this one seems to be a little weird. Things really? Seem to be going a little sideways.
I guess I'll look into that. I don't know.
Yeah, Google it.
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking for stories right now, I might recommend the presidential election has kind of gone off the rails.
Sorry, I've been neck deep in Gil Cisneros news. I've completely missed this presidential election.
No, today, like, I was honestly frantically contacting every registrar to be like, what happens if a bunch of unhinged people show up at a county elections office and demand to like storm the ballot counting process? Like, what is Los Angeles County or Orange County gonna do if that occurs? Like, they have a whole process of, you can apply online, the public can watch the ballot counting process, but the only people who do that are like the extreme, like, odd, either you're a member of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party and you're there for a reason, or you're like super civically engaged in a way that's like not healthy. But I mean, they get like,
this is the time you're not spending on Reddit, essentially.
Yeah.
On subreddit.
I don't judge what you do with your time, but
I just judge.
Well, I could feel that. And now I feel like this is not a safe space. So thank you. I'll be sure to remember that.
Well, just let us know what name you're on subreddit under, so we can make sure not to throw
so you can like you can
mocking
watch
comments to you.
I don't want to minimize the question that you're asking, because actually this seems to have been a threat in Philadelphia tonight.
Yes.
But because I want to find out the answer to like what they told you.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you can actually like watch.
Oh yeah.
The like they had that like vulture cam or something like that a few years ago with like the nesting eagles, or I think it was Eagle Cam.
That's
like
exactly.
You just watch the eagles in the nest.
Yes, it's the Eagle Cam for county workers who are just like in the ballots, processing, opening envelopes, matching signatures, counting everyone. I mean, there's like ballots that show up that are chewed up and weird, and they have to remake them onto a new ballot. And I mean, I could get into this like there's like a whole world of the types of ballots that have to be, you've got your conditional registrations where people in California can just show up and register same day. And you don't know, I mean, they fill out a ballot, but they go into these special pink envelopes. And so then at the big processing center in LA, it's at the Pomona Fairplex. They're opening these pink envelopes and being like, okay, this person showed up. They said that they lived in California and that they were legal to vote. Now we got to track all that information down. So that's happening. And then just the regular vote by mail process is happening. And, it's very involved that you have dozens of observers at all of these facilities from different political parties or just the uber nerds. And yeah, they watch quite closely. COVID has kind of messed that up for people because you have to have social distancing. But, you know, and in Orange County, for example, I talked to the registrar, you can challenge individual ballots. If you look at, you know, this vote by mail ballot that somebody opened up, and like, I feel like that bubbling with your blue ink on the ballot didn't quite get in the borderline. And that seems like a little on the edge. Individual members of, you know, the public can say, hey, registrar, I want you to take another look at this. Now, the likelihood is it's going to be counted, but you have the right as a member of the public to be a part of this process. And it's just not something that people pay attention to until it's Arizona or Pennsylvania, where it's a swing state that will decide the electoral college. And literally Trump supporters are showing up, demanding to either stop or continue the count and, you know, intimidating, kind of shaking up these county workers. So yeah, it's a.
So what did they say? What did they, when you asked them that question, like, what happens if there's violence? If they're like, what did they tell you?
You know, you have to apply to be a part of the observer process. You have to, you know, have a badge at all times. You get escorted when you're observing, so there's somebody around. But you know, besides the fact that like it's county buildings, so you know, sheriff's departments are you know, on call, they don't have like a huge, you know, expectation of unrest because this hasn't happened. I mean, there was the Brooks Brothers riot, right, in 2000, but that wasn't, you know, anything that was like dangerous or making people feel uncomfortable. Now, hopefully everybody keeps a cool head, even though the rhetoric from the White House is, in my opinion, quite, you know, dangerous right now. Hopefully people keep a cool head, and these election workers who are doing, honestly, really important work, really tedious and stressful work right now. You know, they can just keep going and be able to shut all this stuff out. But it's tough.
So one of the things that I think is fascinating about California that I know you can kind of give some insight on, you know, obviously the presidential race, regardless of what side you're on, has everyone fired up. You know, so a lot of attention goes there, but we know, you know, what the result is going to be in California. We know who's going to get California's electoral votes before the day starts. There's no big Senate race on the ballot this year. You know, for a lot of people, they might not have, you know, congressional races or something like, you know, so in some ways it may not be the most, or if it is, it's not a competitive congressional race. What does that mean for like general interest in our election when some of the big ticket things don't exist that exist in, you know, so many other states?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Like, if you're in one of these competitive races, there's 5 or 6 of them statewide, the congressional races, you're getting bombarded by ads for these folks. You know, the 25th district in North LA County, you've got a Central Valley race with TJ Cox and David Valadeo, and then Orange County, really the Harley Ruda and Michelle Steele and Gil Cisneros and Young Kim, as you are clearly well aware. You're deep in the Cisneros land already. If you're in one of those races, you know, that is definitely, you know, that campaigns are doing outreach. You're getting contacted all the time. You know, that's driving turnout, you know, even during a presidential year. In California, voters are very motivated to go cast a ballot, or have been very motivated to go cast a ballot against Donald Trump. I mean, let's be honest, like this has been an election driven by the top of the ticket, even if Californians know that they are certainly, you know, the electoral votes are going to go to Joe Biden. You know, the excitement to simply go and cast a referendum on this president is real. So that's out there. And then you have these big ballot propositions that, you know, for some people were also drivers. But I would say that the energy around this presidential race has been enough. We are seeing historic turnout. You know, in Orange County, certainly. LA is going to be high. It's not going to reach like 2008 levels. But across California, we're seeing historic turnout.
I was going to ask along those lines. I mean, that was one of the things I wanted to find out about was just, what it was like in terms of that turnout. But since that's been answered, what from your reporting, anecdotally, all of that has just been the vibe of it? Because, heading into this election, there had been a pretty big narrative about chaos, concerns about, violence taking place at these polls, poll watchers out of control. What have you seen or heard about in terms of the overall vibe with this election in LA and in California?
I really think that the president and also Democratic groups who were able to sort of emphasize the danger to the vote that COVID-19 posed, and then also potentially Donald Trump undermining, vote by mail, all those things, Democrats aren't dumb. They know that if Donald Trump is out there saying don't vote by mail and people start to feel worried about their vote, that's going to drive turnout. So, that's something that people feeling as though something's being taken away, that's a huge driver for them. And, we've seen that in other places, when there is a threat to the vote, that is actually a huge turnout driver because people realize that they have to, protect what they have. They have to fight for what they have. So, the early turnout in California has just been gigantic. It's the first time that we send a ballot to every registered active voter. And that, obviously part of that was the fear about, health safety at the polling places. But that also sort of, I think, jolted people to be like, okay, we've seen protests all summer. This is a pandemic. There's talk about the USPS not getting ballots in on time. Fear is a big driver. And I think the fear of your vote being taken away or undermined did drive turnout as well.
What is one of the other things that I think is super fascinating about this election cycle has been the emphasis on polling. Again, sort of thinking about like the context in which this election takes place. There again, no president, no mystery around the president and no big senator. How much polling and stuff actually gets done in California? Like what types of information are whether it's the races for initiatives, what statewide or whatever, like how much of that gets done in this state? And what impact does it have?
I mean, when you think about a proposition like what we saw with 22, the Uber and Lyft and DoorDash initiative, that had $200 million of tech money behind it.
I know we're going to get into that. That's insane.
It's insane. And yeah, they're polling like crazy. That campaign is polling like crazy. Now, is it public? Generally, no. Sometimes it gets leaked to reporters. The yes and no campaigns, have information about that. But for the statewide stuff, you do see like a few polls leading up to the election. Berkeley does nice polling. The Public Policy Institute of California does nice polling on the statewide again. So, if there's a gubernatorial election or a Senate seat up or anything like that, you would see, pretty decent polling. It's very hit or miss on the local stuff. Even the local congressional races, it's usually just internal polls. The DCCC, the Republican National Committee, like they'll poll, but it's hit or miss whether you actually get to see it. So, and let's be honest, even the proposition polling that happened this year, Prop 22 was supposed to be a lot closer than it was. There was a ton of undecideds out there, and they seem to have broken really late.
22 is the Uber, Lyft, DoorDash thing.
Yeah.
I get them all mixed up.
Yeah. How could you?
Too many numbers. Which is something else we're going to get into here in a second. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And the rent control one, Prop 21 that would have let governments institute more rent control. That one was supposed to be really close, and it just got creamed. So the quality of polling is. I mean, nationwide, we're wondering whether polling is a thing anymore.
I know, Brian, I want to touch on some specifics with 21 and 22, among a few other initiatives. But that question of polling has become so prevalent now. And like everything, it's focused a lot on the presidency. But as it turns out, there was a lot of Senate polling nationally that was way off. And there's just been a lot of what seems to be polling errors in general. From your perspective as somebody that's been around this a lot, have you noticed anything that's changed in terms of either demographics or the way politics are covered or consumed, something like that, that could maybe explain why there's a shift going on that polling can't account for? Or do you think it's maybe a matter of just polling mechanisms don't work in, 2020 regardless?
Yeah, I think we might be seeing a mix of all of that. I do think that the Trump voter is extremely hard to poll. They don't want to talk to the traditional ways that we outreach for polling. Not we, journalists generally don't poll. Big outlets do, like New York Times and the Washington Post, collaborate on polls. But, I think that it's very difficult to get a sense of the turnout that President Trump is getting, because he's getting people that are not traditional voters. He's getting people who are distrustful of institutions or who enjoy trolling institutions. We might see either a shy Trump vote, or we might be seeing a trolling Trump vote that, somebody calls up and says who you're voting for, and they're like, Kanye, we don't know. And, I'm actually talking to Steve Schmidt tomorrow, one of the founders of the Lincoln Project, and he's a big pollster, Republican, well, kind of Republican now. He's a black sheep of that family.
I was going to say sort of a Republican without a home.
Yeah.
But, a lot of those guys are.
Yeah. I want to ask him all these things, because I think all of us are like, okay, maybe we're far off in 2016. You said you adjusted some things about outreach, especially to white non-college educated men who were really tough to nail down in the 2016 election. Doesn't seem like it worked out this time around either. So what do we say about the polling industry? Is it dead? Does it need to have another overhaul, or are we just going to have the same conversation in 4 years?
What I think is really interesting is that idea of, if people are trolling, they're trolling. And ultimately, I don't think you can do anything about that. And then you just have to decide whether or not I think the effort that goes into polling is even worth it. But the idea of, whether you want to call it shy Trump voters, or I'd actually listened to a political podcast that examined the idea of shy Biden voters, depending on where you happen to be living. If it was a highly, very charged politically right-leaning area, whether you might be shy about that. But the idea that you wouldn't feel comfortable or willing, for whatever reason, to essentially anonymously tell a pollster what you think, because there's not going to be any ramifications for it unless you are that, I guess you feel that judged by a pollster for whatever. There's really no ramifications for being honest. So the idea of like where our politics are now, if you would feel like you have to keep this quiet from, essentially an anonymous poll, it's fascinating. But I think it's also a little bit scary when you think about the whys and all of that.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of you don't feel comfortable, and also you fundamentally dislike and distrust the types of people who would be polling you, and you don't, you are not, it's not even a comfort thing. To me, it's like a rejection of traditional institutions. So, and that's something that we haven't obviously reckoned with, despite the fact that the Electoral College seems to be, in the key states that Biden still needs, seems to be trending that he will gain 270 electoral votes. He's probably going to be president with a Republican Congress that, is to be seen, but likely Mitch McConnell will be obstructionist at every turn, even on, judicial appointments and cabinet appointments. And, the House lead for Nancy Pelosi's Democratic, it's dwindling. So what does that mean? We're more divided than ever. That's a trite thing to say now, but what the hell are we going to do about it? Right.
Was the expectation that, cause the Harley Ruda, the Ruda, Michelle Steele race is very close. This is Narrow's Young race is really, Young Kim race is really close.
Was the one you're obsessed with?
Was that expected? I mean, because obviously it was a big deal when Orange County turned blue in 2018. Was the expectation that it would just keep getting bluer, or that it would kind of snap back to something more traditional in this cycle? Because again, I wasn't. That's not my district, so I wasn't paying particularly close attention to all the lead up, other than knowing it was going on.
Yeah. Young Kim, the last time I checked, was ahead by 1,500 votes or so. And then the Harley Ruda race was like Michelle Steele ahead by like 2,500. And things had been trending slightly in both of the Republican candidates' favors. So they're both in Orange County. There are those interesting congressional races. It's two Korean American women who are challenging the incumbent Democrats who won in 2018, who flipped those districts blue. And these Republican Korean American women who are, able to tap into diverse communities in Orange County, a lot of church outreach as well in Orange County that, I watched Michelle Steele do a lot of these like online Sunday, pastors kind of sit downs with pastors and, things that are really effective at, reaching people that maybe wouldn't normally be watching anything to do with politics. Those races were always expected to be close. Harley Ruda in the 48th district faced a big registration disadvantage. He still, has about, I think, 6 or 7 point disadvantage in terms of more Republicans registered in the 48th. That's like Huntington Beach, coastal Orange County. And he was able to beat Dana Rohrabacher because, Dana Rohrabacher was a really idiosyncratic candidate. Yeah, like he's been in Congress for like 30 years. He was a Reagan speechwriter, so he dined out on that for a long time, and was just a very different. He was like a pro legalized marijuana surfing Republican, but also like really loved going to Russia and like being pals with Putin. So
timing is everything.
There was some stuff with Dana Rohrabacher that made him beatable. I think there's no question.
Even Kevin McCarthy made that joke that like, it was some offhanded thing, but it kind of had a ring of truth to it. Like, if anyone's a Russian mark, it's Dana Rohrabacher.
This is an interesting question from the Nathan Mark. Could California turn red again with a more central Republican Party?
Red in terms of like the Republican Party actually, getting statewide candidates elected again. I think that would be a really big lift. I think that if anything, because Republicans now are in the minority, even to no party preference voters. So there are more no party preference voters registered in California than Republicans. So that was a big shift when that finally happened. There was a lot of soul searching articles about what happened to California Republicans. Obviously, it's the, start of huge Republican careers. Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, Howard Jarvis started the taxpayers revolt here that swept the nation. What I think is interesting is to look at like a candidate or a politician elected now, has been in office for a while. Chad Mays out in Riverside. He's out in the desert, like Rancho Mirage. And he was the assembly leader of the Republicans in the state legislature. And he had a few too many instances where he worked across the aisle with Democrats, and basically he faced a revolt from his own party. And Chad Mays decided to leave the Republican Party before this election, and he ran as a no party preference candidate, and he was elected. And I think that's really fascinating.
I've never heard of him, but that's completely fascinating.
Yeah, Chad Mays. Yeah. And if anything happens along those lines where, you had Schwarzenegger kind of going in this like third way, trying to kind of carve out an independent, more socially liberal, economically conservative type model, I actually do think that you could get traction, especially on a local basis. I don't know statewide if you can break this just super majority in the legislature and massive voter registration advantage of Democrats. But if you did carve out something that, could reach more Latino voters, could reach more folks who are no party preference, I could see there being this new type of Republican to emerge out of California. But that was a conversation I would have said was more possible before I see what's happening nationwide, where this referendum on Trump did not end up being this huge rebuke that we thought we would see. Like, we thought we would come out of this 2020 based on the polling, and the Republican Party, would be like, oh my gosh, we have to rethink everything. We have to move to the center or whatever. And that's not going to happen. So
really quick, and this both answers a question and also I think amplifies what you're talking about. For the kid from NYC, Libby, did MMA fighter Tito Ortiz win a councilman seat in Huntington Beach? Yes, he did.
Did he? I didn't look. I knew he was running, but oh man,
he did. I just checked on that, and the answer to that, I'll double check, but I believe it is yes. And he also was running. He was running in a very intentionally Trumpian manner. And it is also the most, I'm not gonna lie, it's a bizarre story.
This is super,
but it is also like, I was gonna say, it's the most predictably Huntington Beach thing ever. That Tito Ortiz, to be fair, is a Huntington Beach native, ends up getting this with no real platform other than just make Huntington Beach safe and extremely macho. Like that seems to just be his platform.
I mean, and like, I guess he can armbar somebody or whatever.
Huntington Beach macho again.
Make Huntington Beach. I would argue Huntington Beach has always been macho. Okay.
Yes. Oh yeah.
How dare you? He looks different, man. I haven't looked up Tito Ortiz in a while. I mean, I haven't watched an MMA fight in a few years, and I feel like I used to see him a lot more. He looks way different than he used to. All right.
He's a serious politician now.
It doesn't work as a straight acronym because it's just Mumba. But if you add a U next to the M and you go MH little U BMA, then it's Mumba. I think so. It's Mumba is the hat.
Well, we've gotten to the bottom of some important questions, and I thank you guys for that.
Look, you don't have time for everything, Libby.
We're trying to help you out.
You're not a superwoman in that sense.
I believe the phrase you're looking for is "thank you."
From the bottom of my heart, thank you.
He won a 15-person council race. He got 4. I'm reading right now from NBC Los Angeles. He got 14% and was the top of the candidates running. For
I feel like Georgia, if you don't get 50%, there's a runoff. I feel like there for the center. I feel like there needs to be a slightly higher threshold than whoever gets the most out of you got to get more than 14%. I think.
Does he know what that job is like?
Does he care?
That's a boring job.
I read a couple articles about this leading because I was just fascinated by it. Based on what I've seen, and I don't want to cast too much aspersion on Huntington Beach's new councilman, but based off what I read, it doesn't seem like he necessarily has a huge handle on the job. I could be wrong.
What committees do you think he's going to be on? Transportation,
the badass committee.
I would like to live in a world where we appeal in 6 months we look up and Tito Ortiz is in every meeting, in a suit with reading glasses on, asking just the most pointed questions at every meeting.
He becomes a policy wonk.
Yeah, no, I'm not ruling it out. I'm sure Huntington Beach, just like every local city, is going to have a huge budget shortfall. So maybe he'll get super into city code and tax enforcement, and maybe he will knock out the. He is the
hero we need, or at least Huntington needs. Okay, but in all seriousness, though, that is an example of a job and a position in a community that's probably a lot more important and influential than people give it credit for. Clearly,
yes.
I heard a report, one of your reports today, as I was taking the kids to soccer, talking about Holly Mitchell and the LA City Council, and these
supervisors.
The Board of Supervisors.
Board of Supervisors, yeah.
Yeah. So these are really important jobs. And she beat Herb Wesson, correct, who had been there for a million years.
Yeah, he was going from the city council trying for the board of supervisors, and it was kind of surprised. She really beat him by like 20 points. Or I mean, the vote is not final. Let's just say this: the vote's not final, but it's clear the math is there. Yeah.
So great example of it. I got my city council and my board of supervisors and all that. First of all, like how many of these types of jobs are in a city like Los Angeles, San Francisco, just major cities around the country that people don't pay nearly enough attention to in terms of the influence that they have? Like, what does Holly Mitchell winning this seat mean? Like, what is she going to do? And then that sort of broader question about jobs like this that we just don't follow.
Yeah. Los Angeles County is especially known for this because we have very few representatives per number of people that they represent. So, the LA County Board of Supervisors is 5 people that represent, 10.5 million folks in LA County, and they have a $35 billion budget. They oversee tens of billions of dollars in public contracts. It's like the whole social safety net of the county. So, the homelessness, social safety net, health, the Department of Health, everything going on with COVID. It's a gigantic position, and there's only 5 people. So each of their districts has 2 million people in it. This is like as large as many states. Like each of them are just like, controlling this vast amount of resources, these county departments that do so much. And, it's the city council in LA is similar, where there's only 15, whereas like in other major cities, you see a lot more members, you see fewer constituents per council member. And the question is like, how can you be truly responsive on the local level when you need to be? I mean, it's, city council, you're filling potholes and you're making policy, for like rent control. I mean, all these things are getting done in the city council and at the county level that are hugely impactful, arguably more impactful to our everyday lives. But, many people don't even like know who they are, who are getting elected. So that's our fault too. I'm not blaming people. Like, we don't make it interesting enough. Let's be honest.
No. I mean, it's, I think in part why somebody like, again, with the risk of disparaging his campaign, Tito Ortiz can win a seat like this because we don't sexy up the position enough to begin with and really make people recognize what it is. And, I'll be the first to admit, I don't know what a lot of these people do at all. When I'm looking at every election, when I'm looking over these people, I'm mostly taking recommendations off, LAist or LA Times or whatever voting guide, because I personally
LAist,
yeah, exactly, where your writing can be found as well. But I mean, I don't often know really what these people do or the ramifications of what they do. Yeah. And I consider myself reasonably aware, but I know I'm not alone in this boat.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely think it's a huge problem. There's also a lack of local news coverage. People are getting laid off. The fact that I have a job covering local government is, I thank my lucky stars every day, because the news model is broken. The way that people get content, they expect to, get news for free. And I think they should be able to get news for free. I just wish there was another way to pay journalists and do that, because I think news is a public good. I think that knowing what the hell is going on in your community should be a right to everybody. But more and more, like, you go outside of major metropolitan areas, who is covering what's happening on a daily basis with your tax dollars? Who's doing that? Like, nobody can make the financial picture work. And we know that there's a demand for content. We just have not figured out how to make either ad space or membership fees or nonprofit stuff. I work for a nonprofit outlet, but I mean, it's nothing new about the problem with journalism and the fact that, reporters are getting laid off left and right. But I think
we are recent victims of this. We understand what we understand what it's all about. I know I wanted to ask in particular about a couple measures that were just voted on You had Prop 17, which allowed parolees to vote. And it passed by a pretty significant margin. It was up by, the last time I looked, around 20% when it was called. And then you had Prop 25, which was about cash bail reform, that failed. And by a lot. I was going to say not quite as big a margin, at least the last time I looked, as Prop 17 passed, but pretty convincingly. On the surface, these measures don't seem like they would be in opposition of each other, but they went in opposite direction, with the voters. From your understanding of the measures and, the voting process reaction to them, why do you think that was?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. So, and the Prop 20 is another one I would throw in there, the parole reform. So these two measures, one to let parolees vote, another to voters approved these parole reforms that had been voted in by the legislature a while back. So they had the chance to overturn and tighten the requirements to get parole, and voters chose not to this time. So those two are like, in the camp of, moving towards the left on criminal justice reform, but then Prop 25, getting rid of cash bail, voters voted it down, like you said. And what
pretty
happened,
strongly.
Yeah. And what happened with cash bail? The industry, the bail industry, it's their livelihoods, and they marshaled a ton of money to fight it. But B, what you saw was progressives going against the idea that this particular solution to cash bail was the right one. So most people would agree, unless you make your money in the bail industry, that when you are accused of a crime and you're awaiting your trial, you shouldn't get out of jail just based on how much money you have in your pocket. Like, that seems like, most people will say, well, that doesn't seem like a great system. It's the one that we have. But what occurred here was the solution that the legislature had passed earlier in, I guess it was last year, was this system of pretrial risk assessments, where the judge would use an algorithm and a set of factors to determine whether someone was a low, medium, or high risk to a flight or to reoffend. And so what progressive groups, when they went into the algorithm and they went into this pretrial risk assessment, they saw that, like a lot of algorithms, there are these baked in biases in the math, and some of the factors that go into deciding whether somebody is a low, medium, or high risk would disadvantage Black people, Latino people, poor people. And so the progressive group said, this is not the right solution. And if we pass this, it's going to need another referendum to change it. And so we need to bail out. I didn't mean to do the pun, but we need to decide to not pass this one. We need to come back with another solution to get rid of cash bail, but in a way that's not going to, disadvantage people of color. And so it was the progressives and the bail industry both fighting this. I mean, Snoop Dogg tweeted about it, or on his Instagram feed. Snoop Dogg was like, vote against 25, the algorithms.
That's just really interesting, because, I mean, the idea that you could have an initiative on criminal justice reform that would unite progressives and the bail industry, something has to be, I guess, if nothing else, potentially objectionable for that to happen. Yeah,
it was super interesting. We saw that kind of percolating. I mean, a lot of the community groups and the local ACLU chapters had gone against 25, but the level to which the voters rejected it was big. So, yeah. Very interesting.
What is, like, when you talk to people, when you talk to politicians, when you talk to, city government people and all that, what do they say about this? So, because this is the worst thing about California politics, I think by far, is the fact that, essentially we do all the work of legislators, with these very confusing, often, it's very difficult to process these ballot initiatives, even when you try. And I sit there and I read as much as I don't know everything that's in them. You have to take.
Are you not an expert on kidney dialysis? What do you do with your free time?
I consider myself more of a hobbyist when it comes to that, but
that's weak.
Yeah, I know. And yet here I am just spouting off about it. But it is the worst thing about California politics. I don't think it's even, in my mind, I don't think it's close.
Yeah.
What do the people who actually work in government think about this? Because they could solve it by doing their jobs.
Well, they could, but sometimes they do their job and the initiative process overturns it. I mean, that's what happened with cash bail. Like, the thing is that the initiative process was built by a guy named Hiram Johnson, who was the governor of California in 1911. He was.
You don't have to tell me that, Libby.
Yeah, well, just reviewing for.
I've got his fat head up on my wall.
They used to say at the time he put the high in Hiram.
He was. Honestly, there's a crazy story about his father was in the legislature. He was governor and he wanted to stick it to the legislature because he felt like they had too much power. He also was like a big opponent of the rail industry, the railroads. And so he created and pushed this constitutional amendment that would allow the referendum and propositions to overturn and to change and either make laws or overturn laws or change the Constitution. And you could do that with the will of people, first getting it on the ballot by gathering enough signatures. Right now, it's like 5% of the people who turned out for governor last election are needed to qualify a proposition.
Oh.
But the way that that's done is, people who can pay signature gatherers. So usually big labor groups, big corporations, and then the people who can actually, once it's on the ballot, fund support, which are big corporations, big labor groups. So Hiram Johnson basically was trying to say, the people can go against special interests and moneyed interests and companies and stuff, and it's all about the people. And it's like, no, 109 years later, it's clearly not about the people. It's about who has enough money to fund these huge propositions. And there's so many aspects of California in terms of budgeting and like how we pay for schools and everything like that is messed up because of this proposition process that's used as a cudgel by special interests.
So how hard would it be to change the state constitution to make it harder to put these things on the ballot?
That's a great question. I don't know. I don't know if it's like 7/8 of the legislature and a vote. I don't know what the standard would be.
It sounds absurdly hard. It always is.
Yeah, you would face a huge opposition too, though. I mean, you would face a lot of special interests who would never want to get rid of this power. What happens too is the legislature will be considering something or pass something or like be on the verge of whatever. And special interests, labor groups, whoever, environmental groups, whatever it is, they will start saying, we're going to fund a ballot measure. We're going to do this thing. If you do this, we will pour $50 million into this ballot measure. And that actually pushes the legislature sometimes to, either get a compromise done, or it can sometimes feel like a gun to their head, because they feel like they don't have, they've been elected to represent us, right? But they have this other factor in the wings that is there that theoretically should be like a good check on the legislature, but it's really just been hijacked by people who can fund these gigantic statewide propositions.
Well, it also really speaks to, by the way, all these different special interest groups and these different industries that have this type of money that they can use to push legislation and influence elected officials. It's an awful lot of money that could otherwise go to the actual laborers. I mean, there's a lot of money that isn't actually going to the workforce in order to benefit, I am quite willing to speculate, the upper percentage of whatever industry we're talking about.
Oh, that's sweet. That's a nice. I have a cold, dead heart about this, and I say, of course, that's what's happening. I mean, $200
I'm not saying
million.
I'm shocked. You didn't open my eyes to it. I'm just pointing it out. I mean, like, I didn't just learn, about Santa or anything from this.
Wait, what?
It's absolutely.
The Santa industry, Big Santa, the way Big Santa
being
goes
pushed
around
by Big Santa.
Like,
I am 100. By the way,
Prop 25 was all Big Santa money.
Sure that the scheduling of the national election this close to Halloween is 100% the doing of big candy, because
Yes.
The stress eating of leftover Halloween candy in the last week has been epic. It's
so
not been
true.
a good combination.
For me, it's been like my meals are chip based. Like that's the only food I end up eating because I'm like so busy. I'm either sleeping or waking up for morning radio or whatever I'm doing. And I swear, like if it's not like able to fit on a tortilla chip, I haven't eaten it in like the past. Yeah, if it's a candy
so
bar,
sad.
yes. But
and
yeah,
California elections, like the California elections last for like another 8 weeks. So when are you going to be able to eat non-chip based food?
I mean, most of them are shaking out at this point. Like the congressional races, yes, that's going to last a while. It's 30 days to certify for the counties, and then the Secretary of State has to certify by December 14th or 11th. Oh, I think it's 11th, and the 14th is the Electoral College vote. You guys will fact check me, I know on that. But yeah,
I can promise you we won't.
But basically, it's 30 days from the election for the counties to certify, and then the Secretary of State has like a week after that. So
I feel like I've learned a lot about secretaries of state this week too. That's the other thing. Like they seem like very nice people. Like every one of them is on CNN like 4 times a day now. They all seem lovely.
Yeah, it's really rare to have them be like ambitious for another office. Sometimes, I mean, you know, there are a few. I would say Alex Padilla of California definitely is going to be running for another office. Cough, cough, maybe the angling for that open appointment if Kamala Harris ends up being VP. But by and large, they're just nerds and they just love like democracy. And it is nice to see it. Although sometimes they get in trouble because of that, because they don't understand what they're getting into.
That's the like the slogan of their club: democracy loving nerds.
It's so nice.
Secretaries of State.
Yeah.
My wife was pen pals with the current Secretary of State of Michigan.
What?
Who's right in the middle of it. Yeah. They were pen pals.
Who's a pen pal with anyone?
Not anymore. Nobody is. But remember, we're a little older.
Yeah.
So we come from the pen pal era, and she was pen pals with the current. She was very smart even then.
I feel like so pen pals before cell phones were a thing and like before email.
Right. You write letters to each other.
Yeah. I was like a child then. I feel like occasionally I would write a letter or like thank you letter to people. But how does one start a pen pal relationship?
I believe like in the back of teen magazines were bound pieces of paper. For people who don't understand, magazines were bound pieces of paper with words inside that were shorter than a book, but long, like not as timely as a newspaper.
I'm not following you entirely, but okay, go ahead.
In the back of them, I think they used to have, as it was explained to me, like teen magazines, like Bop and, Tiger Beat or whatever. There'd be like a section where you could get a pen pal, and they would.
Is that how she got the pen pal?
I believe so. She's lifelong friends with a lot of people still that were her pen pals when she was growing up.
You land on the wrong person.
Yeah,
that could get dicey.
Like, I told her she should write a book about this. I think it's fascinating.
Prisoners join that program?
I think actually that does happen a lot. Or I don't know if it still does, just because magazines don't exist. But I'm pretty sure that back in the day that did used to happen a lot.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. But that's very cool. That I love that story, and I wish I had a pen pal now.
By the way, Libby, also
write us a letter. We'll be your pal.
on Twitter, because we feel bad for you still in the knee deep in all these California politics that won't end, stuck eating chips. We asked people on Twitter at Cam Brothers for chip suggestions for you, just to help you keep things fresh and new. So that's going to be out there, and you're added in it. So hopefully people throw out some ideas. You can also throw them out in the chat right now too, if you got some good chip suggestions for Libby.
All right. Now, so before we let you go, so we know you have many important things to do. So we're going to try to keep you super long here. But you are a proud Seattleian, a person of Seattle, and as we know, the Seattle the NHL has awarded a team to Seattle, the Kraken. Andy and I are huge fans of the Kraken. We love the Kraken. Do you have Kraken gear?
Do you like that name? You do?
I love the name.
It's great.
Love the name, love the uniforms, love everything about it.
I'm I'm anti-giant squid, so I was immediately turned off. But yeah, I just am frightened. The giant squid is out there, like it's real,
right.
and I'm
well,
frightened.
That's what
Right, and it's on your
so
side, Libby.
Right.
That Kraken's
That's
fighting
true.
for you.
That's true. I guess I should see it that way, but yeah, I just think about like they're really out there, and it scares me.
Yeah. Don't
Anyway,
fuck
I'm
around.
very excited about the Kraken. The Kraken.
Okay, so here we go. This game is in honor of you. It is Kraken trivia. I'm going to give you guys clues, and you're going to answer them. And some of them are true and false. Some of them are fill in the blank. Some of them are multiple choice. And here we go. Andy versus Libby in Kraken trivia in honor of Seattle, where Libby is from. Question number one.
Than me. I don't feel good about this.
True or false? The word Kraken comes from the Norwegian word krake, which probably is related to the German word krake, which means octopus. Pardon my pronunciations. Andy?
I'm going to say that's false.
I'm going to say crack-yay. It's true.
Wow. I like that.
It's a little snotty. It's also correct. Libby 1-0. Yeah, it sounds too obvious that it's just German for octopus, but it is. Number 2, Libby 1-0. True or false? The Kraken was immortalized in comic book form in a Marvel character named Commander Kraken, who had a hook on his hand that delivered a deadly electric shock. Libby, true or false?
I am enough of a nerd. I've never heard of that, so I'm going to say false.
I'm also going to say false. That sounds like the type of thing you'd make up.
I didn't, though. Commander Kraken, 100% absolutely true. What? Yep. Didn't really break through, but he existed. Number 3, in his 1755 book, The Natural History of Norway, Bishop Erik Pontoppidan writes extensively about the Kraken, includes this fact about Kraken feces, which is well known to have what notable property? Now, this is a fill-in-the-blank question. I will reward a point based on essentially an arbitrary evaluation of your answer and how close it is to the actual truth. What was so special about Kraken feces, according to the Natural History of Norway writer Bishop Erik Pontoppidan? Andy?
No scent whatsoever.
All right, Libby?
Okay, so Kraken, they're eating like plankton and stuff. So what's going to be what's going to be in their feces is
they could be used as chips.
Oh, they're going to be like, I'm going to say that there's like a lot of there's like a lot of they're good fertilizer.
Libby, you are so close. Actually, I'm going to give you 2 extra. I'm going to give you 2 points for that.
Wait, what? You shouldn't get 2 points.
According to granted, it's a fictional animal.
I think that sounds fair.
Yeah, I agree. The feces was rich in fish because of what the Kraken was eating, and the Kraken would actually use its own feces as bait to attract more fish, which is actually very eco when you think about it. It's very circle of life.
I was working it out. Like you
that
saw
was really close.
Yeah.
I guess that really means my answer of no scent doesn't work at all.
Nope, not at all.
That's just way off.
Lost a point as soon as you opened your mouth. 1755 was also the year of a massive earthquake in Lisbon, Portugal, which happened on the morning of Saturday, November 1st at approximately 9:40 a.m., brought with it fires and a tsunami. It killed approximately 30 to 50,000 people. That's sad. So I really seemed too excited at the beginning.
Bringing it down.
What was the magnitude of that earthquake? Again, fill in the blank. Closest to the pin gets the point.
Is it closest to going over? No, it's closest to the pin. Okay.
Yeah. So it's not Price is Right.
It's not
rules,
the showcase showdown.
Right. Andy cannot bid $1.
Magnitude. Did you say how far away it was from Lisbon?
I did not. That information is not currently available via wiki.
So I'm going to say that was an 8.2 earthquake.
All right, Andy?
8.6.
Oh, everybody gets a point. It was an 8.4.
Wow.
For a second, I thought like Libby was like a savant in here, but then Andy came around. Yeah.
being from the West Coast, and Seattle and LA both have earthquakes, so I am a bit of an earthquake savant. Like I've experienced many.
Hey, I was here for Northridge, all right? So I don't.
Oh, yeah.
Northridge 94, like back when earthquake meant something.
Yeah.
I was here for that.
I can't claim that.
All right, number 5, zoologist Pierre de Montfort studied giant cephalopods in the 1700s, and after 10 ships went missing in 1792, he made the bold assumption of blaming it all on the Kraken. He was wrong, as it turned out, and it ruined his reputation. What caused those boats actually to be lost? Andy, was it A, pirates, B, hurricane, or C, disease? Pirates, hurricanes, or disease?
1790, what?
1792. 10 ships go missing. He blamed it on the Kraken. He was incorrect, and it ruined his reputation.
I'm going to say
hurricane, disease.
I'm going to say pirates, just because that's the most exciting.
It does sound good.
Where were they? Where were the ships?
You have a lot of questions. Just answer mine.
I'm gonna say
you
disease.
made really good grades. You made really good grades, didn't you? Like really
so
good.
Pathetic, you guys. It is so. I'm such a teacher's pet. Yes, I'm gonna say disease.
Oh, the answer is hurricanes. Go with the obvious ones. What wipes out 10 boats? A hurricane.
Pirates.
Well, pirates
really
too.
good pirates.
Yep.
That's too many boats. Yeah.
The city of Seattle was recently rewarded an expansion team, which we just discussed, called the Kraken. It's the first NHL team, but not Seattle's first professional hockey team. Which of the following is not a nickname of a Seattle professional hockey club? A, the Metropolitans, B, the Seahawks, 2 words, not one, C, the Salmon, or D, the Eskimos? Libby, you go first this time. The Metropolitans, the Seahawks, the Salmon, or the Eskimos? Which is not a professional hockey team that once played in Seattle?
I thought this was going to be easy, and I have no clue. That is crazy. I'm going to say the Salmon can have been one.
Andy?
That was my thought too, just because the Salmon feels a little bit too on the nose. But because I need to try to make up some ground, I'm going to go against my own instinct and say the Metropolitans.
Strategic.
No, Andy, not only should you have gone with the Salmon, the Metropolitans were actually Seattle's first Stanley Cup winning team, because although the NHL did not exist in 1917 when the Metropolitans won the Cup actually predates the NHL, which is a fun fact about the Stanley Cup. Glad I got to work that in there. Only a couple more here.
All right, because I'm getting my ass kicked, I'm going to be obnoxious and put this comment up from the kid from NRC. Libby, that student that would remind the teacher that she forgot to collect the homework. I'm being a really bad sport here, but yes, I'm putting that up right now.
That's true, isn't it?
I did that. I think.
Of course you did. Of course you did, because you knew that you aced that homework. You wanted to make sure it got collected, and if it meant sacrificing somebody like me, so be it.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted that gold star, man. There's no high like a gold star. No high.
But look, it worked. I mean, it definitely worked. All right, here we go. True or false? In silent films of the 1910s, teens, and 20s, the Kraken was often portrayed using stock footage of an octopus in a bathtub attacking a toy ship. Libby, true or false?
Sure. Yeah, that happened. I feel like I've seen movies like that.
I think it's true too.
That is absolutely true. That qualifies as special effects back in 1915.
Yeah. Practical.
Probably scared the shit out of people too.
I love any movie with practical effects, and that's a practical effect.
It's better. It's better. It's actually better than all the CGI. It actually is more realistic looking than all the CGI.
See, like, we have so much in common. Why are we even fighting? Like, why?
Because you're kicking my ass. That's why we're fighting.
We're down to our last question. My favorite bit of movie trivia is the one, like the first movie of the train driving, towards the camera, and all the people get up and run out of the theater because they think it's going to hit them. Like, that's back when special effects meant something. All right, here we go. Last question. Libby, you carry a 1-5. That is a dominating 6-2 lead, which you would think would be enough to clinch it, but it's not, because this last question is actually worth 4.5.
Just randomly.
It's just by dumb luck. This one is worth 4.5.
That works.
In 1555, please listen carefully. In 1555, Olaus Magnus wrote of a sea creature with, quote, sharp and long horns round about like a tree root up by the roots. They are 10 or 12 cubits long, very black. and with huge eyes. What in ancient times was the length of a cubit? A, shoulder to fingertips. B, fingertip on the right arm to fingertip on the left arm. Or C, elbow to fingertips. What was the length of a cubit? Libby, she's measuring.
Elbow to fingertips.
Andy?
Actually, I think that's what it is. I think it's elbow to fingertips.
Do you want to be right or do you want to win?
I want to be right.
You are correct, and you lose by exactly 4 points.
Yeah.
Libby, a dominating 10.5 to 6.5 win in Kraken trivia. Congratulations. I can only imagine that this is a professional highlight for you.
The height of the entire career for sure.
Yeah.
Never to be matched.
Nope. It's over for you. Might as well quit.
It's all downhill.
Yeah, you can start eating real food.
All right. You were up at 4 this morning to do morning edition.
I was up at 3 this morning.
3 this morning
straight.
to do.
God, I feel so guilty now.
Yeah.
You're not getting up at 3 again tomorrow, though, are you?
No. That's
Okay,
why
good.
I have a adult beverage beside me. I got a little break. It's just a regular day tomorrow. And you know,
Of you and Gil and Harley and the gang.
Michelle and Young, and we're all gonna hang. Yeah.
Senior politics reporter at KPCC, Libby Denkmann. Thank you so much for doing this. This is an insane time for you, and to give us an hour and do some fun stuff, we really do appreciate it.
This was awesome, you guys. It was so fun to hang. Thank you.
Yeah, this is great. Great
This is only the first hour of the show, right?
It's fun catching up. Great seeing you. We really appreciate it.
Likewise.
Who's on tomorrow?
Who's on tomorrow? JB Long, voice of the
Excellent.
Rams.
Excellent.
So, and then
fun.
Monday, Linda Cohn.
Cool.
Yeah. So a lot of important people coming up. So thanks again to Libby. We'll see everyone tomorrow.
Dank you, Nederland.